5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are live. Coming to you live with Lichtman Live. Say what's up to the people, Dad.
Welcome to our very astute and sophisticated audience. Still recovering from the National Senior Olympics. And if you don't believe climate change is real, I know this doesn't apply to our audience, you haven't tried to run an air quality index of 157.
That's the key. I think we should make all climate skeptics go run out when the air quality is bad.
And why is the air quality that bad, Sam?
Wildfires.
Wildfires, which are directly tied to climate change. You know, somehow the Trump administration has found 5 fringe scientists, you know, way out of the mainstream of some 98% of scientists, to claim that greenhouse emissions pose no threat to human health. I'd like to see every one of those fringe scientists come with me and race with air quality index approaching 160. Maybe they'll change their minds.
Got him.
All right. But that's not our chief topic tonight.
We got a lot of talk. I can't speak right now. We have a lot to talk about tonight. Firstly, HHS Secretary RFK Jr. just pulled nearly $500 million in funding from. Let me try that again. HHS Secretary RFK Jr. just pulled nearly $500 million in funding for mRNA vaccine development, Dad.
You know, this may not be the most spectacular of all maneuvers by the Trump administration. It's kind of a bit flown under the radar. It's not that the news hasn't reported it, but it hasn't been quite given the same attention as, for example, the firing of federal officials, the dismantling of government agencies, the attempt to rewrite and undermine the Constitution on birthright citizenship. But this could be, maybe if not the worst, one of the most dangerous, the worst moves made by this administration or any administration in the history of the country.
Wow.
I'll repeat that. This could be one of the worst, most dangerous moves made by this administration or any administration in the history of the United States. What is mRNA? This is a huge breakthrough in vaccine technology. The old technology relied upon priming your immune system through vaccines that utilize dead or deactivated viruses. mRNA vaccines bypass that. They utilize RNA, which is the messenger component of DNA, to prime your immune system without having to utilize deactivated or dead viruses. Do you know who started the development of these vaccines during COVID-19? Was it some lunatic Democrat?
Donald John Trump.
Exactly, yes. Remember Operation Warp Speed that led to the development of the mRNA vaccines. Not only are they more effective and safer than the old technology, they have an enormous advantage, as we saw with Operation Warp Speed, that they can be developed rapidly and relatively cheaply and become available broadly to the American people, as we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic. Depending upon which independent study you look at, the mRNA vaccines have saved at least many hundreds of thousands, more likely millions of lives. Canceling future development of this vaccine makes every American vulnerable to future pandemics. You know, RFK Jr. has claimed, and I didn't see him cite any scientific studies on this, that these vaccines are not safe or effective, when in fact all of the independent scientific studies suggest just the opposite. He's just talking off the top of his head. Said he consulted with FDA and other officials. Guess who appointed those officials, Sam, that he consulted with?
Trump.
They're not independent experts. They haven't conducted extensive studies of these vaccines.
But it's not just a risk to Americans, because the folks that develop these viruses come from America usually, and then they distribute them usually to the rest of the world. So folks in Asia, Africa,
everywhere. This is a threat to the people of the world.
A lot
You're
of the
right.
vaccines they get are first developed here in the United States.
Right. And it forfeits America's leadership in scientific development when it comes to combating pandemics like COVID-19. And you know they're going to happen. I can't tell you when they're going to happen, but it's overwhelmingly likely they are going to happen. And we've crippled, for no good reason, just because of RFK Jr.'s unfounded quack science biases against vaccines. We've essentially disarmed ourselves when it comes to fighting future pandemics, and really undermine not only the American people, but people all over the world. And this further underscores something that I have so many times emphasized, that confirmation hearings are absolutely worthless. RFK Jr. can say anything he wants. I'm not going to undermine, American health or vaccines. People who want them will still be able to get them. And then once he's in office, Sam, how much does he have to go by what he said?
He doesn't at all. Yeah, you're not a scientist, but you know about these political hearings, and you're always up in arms, and you're always saying they're lying, they're not telling the truth. These senators have to dig deeper, and they seem to never do that.
They never do that. And come on, how could anyone believe? I don't know how old the guy is, but I think he's over 60, right? Can you check his age?
Yeah.
He's been around for decades and has led the anti-vax movement for decades. And you think, what he says...
He's 71.
He's 71, so he's been around even longer. So you think what he says when he's trying to get confirmed is somehow going to contradict a lifetime of quack science and anti-vaccine agitation? It's just astounding that this person should be the most important health official in the United States, and maybe the most important health official in the world. But just don't take my word for it. Let's look at what the leading independent experts on infectious diseases and vaccines have had to say. This is Michael Osterholm, who runs the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota. He's not a politician. He is an expert in infectious disease. This is what he has to say, Sam. This is shocking. Quote, "This may be the most dangerous public health judgment that I've seen in my 50 years in the business. The most dangerous public health judgment I've seen in my 50 years in this business. Jeez. It is baseless, and we will pay a tremendous price in terms of illnesses and deaths." Jennifer Nuzzo, who runs the Brown University School of Public Health Pandemic Center, quote, "This is a profoundly disappointing development. When there's the next pandemic, we're going to be caught flat-footed. It absolutely leaves the country vulnerable." Chris Merkins, who was a top official in biodefense in guess what administration, Sam?
Tell me.
First Trump administration. Again, not some lunatic left-winger. Quote, "I think that it endangers the national security of the United States.
Wow.
National security, beyond health. It could put the U.S. at a strategic national security disadvantage and would be a significant threat to the national security of the United States. Here is the absurd justification that Kennedy has given. Not cited any studies or independent authorities. He said, quote, after reviewing the science and consulting top experts at NIH and FDA, that is, more quack scientists that, they appointed, we have determined that the mRNA technology poses more risk than benefit against these respiratory viruses. Absolute gobbledygook, Sam.
Yeah, I believe after he put out some video making all these claims, and they were instantly fact-checked, and so many of them were twistings of the truth or just flat-out lies.
Yeah, remember, this is a guy who put out a report which cited non-existent surveys and studies that were just fabricated, and they called it a formatting error. My freshman students wouldn't get away with that. A formatting error has to do with how you highlight paragraphs or sections of your report. Citing non-existent studies is not a formatting error. And scientists have further pointed out, even when they cite existing studies, they fundamentally twist them and misinterpret them. Let's look at Dr. Peter Hotez, the dean of the Baylor College of Medicine's National School of Texas of Tropical Medicine, who runs the Texas Children's Hospital Center for Vaccine Development. Hardly someone, immersed in a deep blue state. Dr. Hotez says his science is backwards, as it often is. This is a proven technology for emerging respiratory viruses or respiratory virus pandemics. It is extremely safe and has been incredibly effective. Look at another former first-term Trump official, Rick Bright, who ran the vaccine research operation during the first Trump administration. Again, not some loony lefty. He said, quote, it is irresponsible to strip funding from future technologies with great potential and shift it towards outdated, old-fashioned technologies. That is, relying on the old, much less effective technology of dead or deactivated viruses, as if that was some leap forward. In fact, it's a step backward, according to this top vaccine official in the first Trump administration. In fact, he says, quote, we're taking our country from 2025 back to 1940. And we all know that is a recipe for failure, for disaster and failure. A recipe for disaster and failure. In an outbreak, when you're facing a rapidly spreading virus, whether it's from nature or a nation-state adversary, thus national security, speed is the name of the game. And this isn't the first set of research that they canceled. The same article points out they had previously canceled a $766 million contract with the vaccine company Moderna to develop an mRNA vaccine to protect people against flu strains like the bird flu with pandemic potential. Final point, I'll let Dr. Hotez speak for us, Sam. The deleterious impact is not only in the contracts that they're canceling, but that they're trying to make the case to the public that mRNA technology doesn't work very well and it's unsafe, and that's absolutely untrue. So not only are they going to cast doubt on mRNA vaccines, they're going to further the agenda, the crazy quack science, dangerous agenda of RFK Jr. And we saw how deadly that was in the very small nation of Samoa when he cast out on the measles vaccine. So this is going to have enormous ramifications, even beyond our ability to develop new vaccines to protect us from ongoing viral threats. It's going to make people less likely to trust and to take vaccines. And that hurts not only those who are unvaccinated, but all those they come into contact with. The implications are stunning and deadly.
Yeah, screw that guy, RFK Jr. He sucks.
Yeah, what has he done that's beneficial?
I mean, some people say, he's going against ultra-processed foods, which is fine.
That's fine, but
that's the only thing I've really heard.
The only thing, and it's unclear how much of an impact that's going to have anyway.
Right. All right, our next topic, Israel's. Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, declares plans to fully control Gaza, suggesting eventual Arab governance, just as international warnings intensify.
Yes, the international community is up in arms about this idea that Israel should take control over Gaza. It would require a greatly intensified war, many thousands of additional Israeli troops descending on Gaza, with likely even more horrific violations of basic human rights that we've seen already. This is a terrible idea. Even the Israeli Defense Forces, as I understand it, are not for this. This is Netanyahu, the Donald Trump of Israel, who has done more to destroy the international standing of Israel than any enemy of Israel has ever done. He is a horror show. Israel was once a moral beacon of the world. Instead, Israel has become a moral tragedy for what they're doing in Gaza. And this idea only makes it so much worse. There's only one person who could stop this, Sam, but he won't do it. And who's that?
Do you think Trump could stop this?
He could, because they depend entirely on American aid.
Right, but I don't even think a Dem politician's going to just stop the aid.
Well, they don't have to stop the aid, but they could use the leverage to stop this horrific, destructive idea.
Right, but people use the same argument when Biden was in office too. That they needed to use more leverage to stop what was going on.
We weren't even close to where we are now when Biden was in office.
I don't know. I think you're
the
running
the number
of
deaths, the destruction.
Right, but a lot of those deaths happened under the Biden administration. Most
of it has happened since.
I don't know if you know that for sure.
I do.
Okay. That's it? That's all you got to say about it?
That's it.
Okay.
There's nothing more to say.
Yeah.
This is, I hate to say this, Sam, but this whataboutism, doesn't work. Whatever Biden may or may not have done is irrelevant. He's not the president. Trump is the president. The responsibility is on Trump. You can criticize Biden all you want. It's totally irrelevant.
I agree with you. I agree that whataboutism isn't. But I just feel like, to say that this is all in Trump's hands and he could end it tomorrow. I know he says that.
I never said that.
Oh.
That's way beyond anything I've said.
Okay.
I said we have leverage and we could use the leverage. I didn't say we could end it tomorrow or anything that dramatic.
Right. I see what you're saying. Energy Secretary Chris Wright says he's reworking past national climate assessments, drawing criticism for rewriting science and walking back climate findings.
This is the counterpart of what's going on at HHS. We have quack science dominating our health organizations in the federal government, and now apparently we have quack science dominating the environmental programs of the federal government. We've already seen that they drew upon fringe scientists who are way out of the mainstream of scientific findings to attempt to overturn the 2009 endangerment finding that the emission of fossil fuels does threaten human life and well-being on this planet. 98% of scientists agree. Look, you could find scientists or other authorities, if you go to the far fringes, to prove anything. You could find, those who claim the earth is flat. Probably even more scientists you could find to claim that than to claim that the burning of fossil fuels has no impact upon human life and human health. Now, it looks like they might be not only undermining the current science, but politically rewriting past findings to conform to their own political views. This is truly horrific. These past national climate assessments were done by the world's leading scientists. They underwent extensive peer review. They were signed off by the national peer review.
You said like by pairs or
maybe by pairs. Signed off by the National Academy of Sciences. It takes years to produce them to make sure they got it right. Now, the possibility has been opened up that they are going to rewrite science to conform to politics. This is exactly what the dictators of the Soviet Union did once they gained power. You could no longer have independent research, independent science. Whatever you were doing, history, sociology, political science, even hard science, had to conform to the political interests of the regime. And that seems like exactly where we're heading, or have already arrived under the Trump administration. This is the way authoritarians seize and maintain power, through the control of information and ideas. It's backed up, of course, by force, as we've seen with this enormous escalation of immigration customs enforcement, turning it into a unique, extraordinary national police force accountable to no one but Donald Trump, and truly, with no controls over what they are doing. So you see the two sides of authoritarianism, which goes back to Orwell's 1984, where he said we have the boot in the face and we also have double think, and the two complement one another. And the double think of this administration is as outrageous as anything that the imagination of George Orwell was able to conjure up in his chilling novel 1984.
Dad, Trump wants a new 2030 census that leaves undocumented immigrants off the count, a shift that could reshape representation and funding across America.
Absolutely. An accurate census is essential for the funding of federal programs which are based upon population, and the population counts are used for the apportionment of congressional seats across the states. That is, the number of congressional seats is proportional to the findings on population of the census. And in turn, that determines also, to a great extent, the number of electoral votes assigned to a state, because the number is equal to 2 senators, which doesn't change, but also the number of congressional seats in the state. He tried to do that in the first term, and he was struck down very narrowly, even by the conservative Supreme Court. Now he's trying to do it again, and it is in direct contradiction. Doesn't bother him, of course, as we saw his rewriting of the 14th Amendment. Direct contradiction to what the census says, enumeration of the population. It does provide for one exception, non-taxed Indians, who, are considered, part, at least at the time, part of independent nations. It does not provide any other exceptions. This is a rewriting and distortion of the plain meaning of the Constitution and the intent of its framers, which is to count everyone, not to make distinctions among those who reside in the United States. And of course, undocumented immigrants are affected by state and national policies. It's not as if they exist somewhere in some separate universe. They are residents of this country, and like any other residents, they have a stake in the policies being made by federal and state governments. This is another brazenly political attempt to rewrite our Constitution, to distort our Constitution in direct contradiction to what conservatives have been professing for decades, right, Sam? That they believe in strict construction. You must stick to the plain meaning of the Constitution and the intent of the framers at the time. You can't impose your own views or your own political interests on the Constitution.
What if I want to put my own personal interest in the Constitution?
Well, that would
not
be just
Trump.
fine.
We don't like Trump, but you like me, right?
Yeah, right. Isn't that the point, though? Whether even if you're a Trump supporter, you should be outraged by this because, the next time there's a Democratic president, you talked, I think, last time about it on the slippery slope. You're right on the slippery slope for a Democratic president to interpret the Constitution according to his or her own values and political interests.
You want to know the honest-to-God truth?
Yeah.
I think if you ask most MAGA folk, they would prefer to just keep Trump as a dictator than have an election where a Democrat could win again. I honestly think that might be true.
That is truly chilling.
I mean,
that means a huge segment of our population is willing to trash our democracy.
I think that's true. You don't think that's true? I don't know. I wonder what the chat thinks.
I think there's quite a high degree of...
You don't watch...
let me finish.
Oh.
I think there's quite a high degree of likelihood in what you say.
Have you ever heard of Jubilee before? It's a YouTube channel.
No.
It's a YouTube channel where they have these political debates, and they do these things called Surrounded, where it's like one person versus 20 people who think the opposite of them. And they recently had Mehdi Hassan, the journalist, on. So It was Mehdi Hassan versus 20 far-right conservatives. And during that debate, a lot of them seem to show that they don't really believe in democracy. And if they could put into power a right-wing leader, they would keep him there.
Right. Let Trump or some other right-wing leader rule indefinitely.
Yeah.
Become a Putin.
I mean, I'm not saying that's the majority of Americans, but I'm saying it is a good chunk of Trump's base and a good chunk of far-right.
I agree with that. And, there's plenty of evidence in the polling data to that effect as well. A lot of the MAGA people were not disturbed by Russian interference to undermine our democracy.
Or January 6th.
Yeah.
Or,
as long as it's helping Trump, that's fine.
Right. That's the issue, is like when you use these phrases like, well, it's a slippery slope. If a Democrat comes in next time, they don't even care.
They don't care.
They don't even give a crap.
No, I don't think they care one bit. I think that's right. And there's lots of data to support that.
Dad, tariffs under Trump are raking in nearly $30 billion a month in revenue. But what's happening with all this money, Dad? Where's it going?
Yeah, probably to ICE.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, they appropriated tens of billions of dollars to ICE to create the biggest federal police force we've ever had, bigger than the FBI, bigger than the DEA, bigger than alcohol, tobacco, firearms, bigger than any other federal police agency, and a totally rogue one, not governed by any restrictions, not accountable to anyone except to the political interests and whims of Donald Trump. And that is truly frightening. The other thing, of course, about these, tens of billions of dollars in tariffs, it's a tax on everyday Americans. That is, for a time, businesses may eat some of the increased prices that result from tariffs. But that's a short-term effect. Over the long run, history shows that, like everything else, it rolls downhill. It gets passed on to the everyday consumer. That doesn't affect billionaires and like Donald Trump and his buddies who, reap huge amounts from the tax cuts that come with Trump's policies. But for Jane and John Doe America, it's a disaster. You're going to be paying higher prices for food, electronics, toys, automobiles, all of the things that are essential to your daily lives. For someone who's very rich, it makes no difference. But for someone living paycheck to paycheck, you are going to pay the price for this.
And the crazy thing is, too, so you think most of this is going to just go straight to ICE? I mean, it's got to go somewhere else. $30 billion a month?
A lot of it is going to go to ICE. They're talking many tens of billions of dollars.
That is true.
To ICE. There may be some minuscule amount that goes against the deficit, but it's not going to even make a dent in the enormous increase to our deficit from Trump's big ugly bill.
And the crazy thing is, too, I've heard reports, I think Trump actually said, or there was some reporting that Trump would be open to using ICE to, like, federally controlled D.C. and New York City. And
yep.
That's crazy.
But it is a goon squad. It's Trump's goon squad, accountable to no one, subject to no rules, no restraints, no restrictions, and it's now going to be enormously beefed up, and Trump can use it for whatever purpose he wants, to federalize Washington, D.C., to control so-called blue state-controlled cities. It's really frightening, and we've never seen anything remotely like this. In fact, if you read the debates in the Constitutional Convention, the framers were so worried about military or militia forces snuffing out our rights and our liberties that they're reluctant to even sanction the establishment of an armed force.
God. How about this? I'll take, they get $30 billion a month. I'll take $1 million a month. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. That's all I'll take.
They had talked about bribing the American people by writing them a rebate.
Yeah, I did hear
check,
a little bit.
Kind of like the stimulus checks that people got.
Right.
But that's not going to come close to offsetting what's going to happen to our economy from these tariffs. The history of tariffs is a disastrous one. He loved the McKinley tariff, 1890. What followed was then the worst depression to that point in U.S. history, the Great Depression of the 1890s, which almost matched the Great Depression of the 1930s, which was very much due to the Smoot-Hawley tariffs of 1930. Yes, the economy was already in trouble, but the Smoot-Hawley tariffs made things so much worse. And of course, not only have conservatives for decades claiming to be the guardians of
the galaxy.
Yes, of strict construction, they've also claimed to be the great supporters of fiscal responsibility and balanced budgets, right?
Not anymore.
Not ever, really.
Oh, not ever, right.
It's all just a lot of rhetoric.
Right. How can I speak tonight?
I don't know. You're young and sharp. You should be able to speak.
That's what you keep saying.
Yeah. I mean, you can understand why an old guy like me might have trouble. But
You speak fine. I'm the only one with those issues.
That's true.
A federal judge just blocked the Trump administration from diverting more than $4 billion in disaster prevention grants, saying only Congress gets to authorize such cuts. That's a good news, right?
Yeah, if it holds.
Oh.
And if Trump follows it.
Oh.
You know, he'll take it to the Supreme Court and he'll get an emergency ruling and who knows. But the bigger implication is this is money that saves lives, right? By dealing with disasters, which the climate change that they claim doesn't exist is making so much worse. So instead of using this money within federal emergency management to save lives, to rescue people, to make people whole, guess where he wants to divert it, Sam?
Tell me.
Come on, you know.
I'm reading an article.
All right. ICE, of course.
Oh, okay.
Rounding up immigrants. You know, he claimed we're going to get the worst of the worst. And, of course, the opposite is true. Over 70% of those detained have no criminal record, no convictions. And the great majority of the others have convictions only for minor offenses like trivial traffic violations. He is just scooping up whoever he can, not the worst of the worst. He's scooping up people who've been living here for many years, who have jobs, who contribute to the economy, who are an important part of the agricultural, construction, hospitality, personal service industries.
So let's talk a little bit about Trump's popularity and his agenda. So he's done a lot, right? And he's pushed out a lot of executive orders, but in a lot of ways, things aren't going Trump's way. From stalled wars in Ukraine and Gaza to an economy under pressure, and even Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh, God, yes. And he can't, it's like glue to his fingers. No matter what he does, he can't seem to shake the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, can he?
He can't seem to shake it. So are things not going well for him? Like, how do you assess his presidency so far?
In a sense, things are going very well for him.
Okay.
In that he's been able to impose a lot of these authoritarian initiatives on the American people. On the other hand, things are going very badly for him in that his approval rating is plummeting. You know, in some polls, including a very reliable Gallup poll and University of Massachusetts polls, he's underwater under 40%, the worst ever for an early president, you know, within the first 6-7 months of his term, except maybe for Trump in his previous term. But so he really has unprecedented, terrible public approval. But I don't think he cares, Sam.
Nah.
Because he just makes up poll numbers.
Yeah.
I'm at 71%, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do think he cares about being popular, but he just lies to himself about it.
He just lies.
That is true.
And he really just cares about adulation.
Right.
You know, from his MAGA base. And I think I've said this before. Trump and his acolytes understand they have a very unique opportunity here to impose their authoritarian views and interests upon the American people. They control everything at the moment. That may not last, but they are going to power full speed ahead to do everything that they can right now, regardless of public reaction. And it may take years, if ever, to undo it.
Yikes. Okay, with that, we will transition into the question portion of our show. Before we do that, we have 800 people watching, but only 374 likes. Make sure you like the stream. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Click that notification bell so you know when we're live. Although we're always live Tuesday, Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern. Remember that members and donations get priority on questions.
We need those donations. They've been lagging a bit, and there's a lot of work that goes into this. I have to do a lot of research. You know, I really got to gear up at my age. Sam has got to do a lot of technical preparation. We just don't, slide on the air without a lot behind it. So we really need your help.
Can I see your best sliding dance move?
Probably not.
Oh, okay. This is from Philip H., one of our very good and close and loyal listeners. They say, what is the purpose of cutting the mRNA research? Pfizer and Moderna won't really be hurt by this, and other companies aren't really gaining. What am I missing?
I've wondered the same thing. This doesn't seem to benefit anyone.
I have a guess.
What's your guess?
RFK Jr.'s ego. He has to be right about this stuff.
Well, that's right. I think Philip H., though, is talking about concretely, who really benefits from this. Absolutely. This is something, you told me he's 71, he's been pursuing for 50 years.
Right.
And now, amazingly, he has the power, which he never had before, to effectuate his incredibly dangerous junk science ideas about vaccines. And that may be all that's behind it. Although I always wonder, I've always said, whenever there's a decision by the Trump administration, follow the money. See who benefits. And I haven't figured out how to follow the money on this one.
There were some senators during his confirmation hearing, like I think Elizabeth Warren brought this up maybe, that he gets tons of money from these like class action lawsuits against big pharmaceutical companies. So he rakes in all this dough from sowing the doubt in people's minds. I
think that there's some truth to that. I've seen similar reports. That's not all of it. I think the biggest thing is this is who he is.
Yeah, I think
he's quack science.
Yeah, I just think it's he's in charge. His ego leads him. He needs to be right. And he made this decision on his own. But I do wonder, do you think he ran this by Trump, or Trump at this point is just saying, do whatever the hell you want?
I think Trump is saying, do what the hell you want. And this isn't the only example of the war on science. We talked about what's going on with the EPA and environmental organizations, the cancellation of critical research grants, and things like cancer research and other research into other diseases.
That kind of stuff surprises me a little bit because Trump in past State of the Unions have said stuff like he's going to be the president that cures cancer. Yeah. When the vaccines did come out, he took credit for it. I do wonder what the dynamics are at play between the people cutting all these programs and Trump.
Yeah.
Because I feel like on the surface, he likes to brag about, I'm going to cure cancer and we're going to have the cleanest water and the healthiest country.
But he doesn't care about the reality of anything.
I guess, yeah.
He only cares that he can claim these things, that he can bloviate about them. Yeah. And, a lot, and, there's also all this weather-related stuff that they've cut. And I wonder, to what extent this is supporting various private interests that are tied to Trump and other members of his administration. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, I don't know, but I guess
I don't know either. But
like you said,
there's been some reporting on that.
It's usually about the money.
At least the money is always a part of it. It's not all of it.
True. Oh, Derek Taylor is back. $20 donation from Derek Taylor. They say, you saw it here first. A popular AI YouTube channel was asked who will win the presidential election in 28. The AI predicted that Gavin Newsom will run against J.D. Vance, with Vance beating Newsom. What do you think?
You can take a poll 3 years or more out from an election and do with it what the great British philosopher David Hume said you should do with works of superstition. Consign them to the flames. They have absolutely no meaning. Early polls, for example.
Well, this is not a poll. This is an AI
but they've got to base it on the polls.
Yeah.
Showed Jimmy Carter trouncing Ronald Reagan for example, in 1980, wound up losing in a landslide, or Mike Dukakis trouncing George H.W. Bush, wound up losing by 7 points.
Yeah. But interestingly, one of the YouTube shorts that still gets a lot of views is a short you did last summer when you said, oh, the Democrats are, this is before even they let go of Biden, I think. You said, oh, the Democrats are freaking out about this polling that shows Trump ahead in all red states. And you said the same thing, you said the same line, and then it ended up being true. Trump did win all red states.
It's random. Sometimes the polls are right, and sometimes they're wrong.
Right.
In 2016, they were all wrong. 2012, they were all wrong. So the fact that they are right sometimes, you can throw darts and you'd be right half the time.
Right. I think the issue with AI is that, especially in this sense, in terms of predicting something, is it takes no account of any sort of dark horse that could come into the mix, right? It's taking a snapshot of all the information that exists right now, right? Which is Newsom leading in the polls for Democrats, J.D. Vance leading in the polls for Republicans, and then makes an analysis off of that. If you would have asked an AI, if you had the AI capability of 2025 before the 2008 election, Obama wouldn't even been on the radar of the AI. You know
Nor
what I mean?
would Jimmy Carter or Bill Clinton.
So I think that's the issue with AI, is it can't account for things that don't exist yet.
Right.
You know?
And with more than 3 years to go, a lot is going to happen.
Yeah. This is from Yashito. Can you say that? Yashito?
I don't want to.
Oh. You don't like Japanese people?
I love Japanese people. I spent a wonderful time in Japan. Please don't say anything like that.
All right, I'm sorry.
That's not right.
All right, I'm sorry. You forgive me?
Yes. Yashito, I can say that.
Without the gigantic government bonds that will continue to accumulate, is it possible for the U.S. to continue to be the biggest consumer in the world? If so, can't the removal of the U.S. dollar from being a key currency make the world economy more predictable, resulting in better ecology as well?
I don't understand that question at all, to be honest with you.
Oh, really?
No idea what he's saying.
I guess he's saying, there's issues with bonds and it may destabilize the U.S. currency and it won't be the world currency anymore. And how will that affect things?
I don't understand how that makes things more predictable. Usually when you have a world currency,
right,
that's much more predictable than currencies wildly fluctuating around the world. They set up the IMF after World War II precisely to avoid that.
Right. Krasimir Boyanov says, Professor, do you think that Putin will fold under Trump's pressure, or is this just another chapter in Putin's book of wins against Trump?
Well, I'm not an expert on Putin, but my analysis suggests that Putin is not going to fold under Trump's pressure. Trump's pressure is not enough. Putin has as his primary objective taking over Ukraine. He's made that crystal clear. And that's part of his broader agenda to reestablish the Soviet empire. And I don't think anything we've seen so far from Trump is going to dissuade him. He's been playing Trump ever since the famous summit way back at the beginning of Trump's first term, when he seemed to accept the view of Putin, not his own intelligence agencies, about Russian interference in the election.
Apple President Tim Cook vowed to invest an additional $100 billion in the U.S. after the tariff threats. How, if at all, will this affect the American worker, consumer, and macroeconomy? Is this just another political favor? What are your thoughts? A lot of tough economic questions tonight.
Well, there's been lots of pledges
right
about investing in the U.S. economy in response to the tariff threats. How real any of this is remains to be seen. I'm very skeptical about these pledges about investments in the U.S. $100 billion over 20 years, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. How is it going to be enforced? Will it really come into play? Have there already been similar initiatives to spend this kind of money in place? Is this just rhetoric? There's so much uncertainty about all of this.
Yeah, and it's confusing too, because I know Tim Cook's been on record before saying that, for example, manufacturing and assembling the iPhone, it's almost not possible for it to be done in the United States. Like,
I've heard that
not
too.
The amount of people, they don't have, the same demographic. It's just not a real thing. So I don't know what that means. It's so general. $100 billion. Yeah. What does that mean exactly?
Who knows?
And look,
probably nothing.
The way globalization works definitely has a lot of cons, right? But it's sort of created this world where places have different economies. Like, it's not necessarily better to have an economy that is a manufacturing economy. Like, Indonesia and Vietnam have manufacturing economies. They're not very good economies, right?
Exactly.
Just because we're not a manufacturing economy doesn't mean we're not a good one. And I understand.
And having a negative balance of trade is not necessarily a bad thing. Just means, they're selling us things that we want.
Right. And I mean, to be clear, I know that a lot of Americans lost jobs when manufacturing left this country, but a lot of those jobs have been made up over time, in the
economy has
industries.
changed.
Yeah.
We're not going back to the old smokestack industries. In fact, the latest jobs report under Trump, who supposedly is bringing back all these manufacturing jobs, guess what? 11,000 manufacturing jobs lost in the U.S.
And, as ChatGPT 5 just came out today, and as technology advances at rocket speed, these manufacturing jobs, just to tell the truth, are going to be less and less done by humans. They're going to be automated. They're going to be done with AI, robots, et cetera, et cetera. So there may not even be any manufacturing.
Economies change. In the 19th century, we were overwhelmingly agricultural, right?
Right.
Then in the 20th century, we switched to more of a manufacturing base. And then in the late 20th, 21st century, we switched to a service intellectual economy. It all changes.
But why do you think Trump's message on manufacturing is so effective?
It's America first, right?
Right.
That's why it's so effective.
Right.
It sounds good. Let's buy America.
Right.
That's a great slogan, even though it really doesn't mean a darn thing.
Alex Kawa says, when Roy Cooper announced his run for Senate, he explicitly took shots at the billionaire class in his announcement video. Do you think this is a sign that the Dems know they need to be more populist and confrontational in order to win?
Let's hope. I'm a big Roy Cooper fan. I think he's got a great shot to win that Senate seat. It's going to be very competitive in North Carolina with Tom Tillis pulling out. It's an open seat. One of the best opportunities for Democrats to pick up a seat. And I've been following it, and I agree with our member. I'm delighted to see Roy Cooper playing offense and not just playing not to lose. We are beginning to see, and I hope it's part of a trend, the Democrats being more confrontational, being more creative, seemingly growing the spine that they've been missing for so long.
$10 donation from I Am Not a Cat. They say, Sam, that's me.
It's not me.
Florida is now joining Texas in redistricting mid-cycle. Do you still feel the Dems should take the high road? Is that true? I haven't heard anything about Florida.
I have. It's very possible. It's not guaranteed, but yes.
I guess if this just becomes the norm now that everybody redistricts mid-cycle, then I guess if everybody is doing it, it balances out. But if you're having like a Texas versus California battle and these 1-to-1, I don't see that as effective. If there's some sort of giant, massive redistricting mid-cycle movement happening, then I guess that becomes the norm. I don't like that, but...
Nobody likes it, but are you just going to roll over and let the Republicans keep control through gerrymandering? Remember what I said. Number one, I do think we need to fight fire with fire. But number two, for years, I have been strongly supporting national anti-gerrymandering legislation and anti-gerrymandering legislation in the states.
Historically Republican, now deep blue, why is New England so liberal? Additionally, why do they have a recent history of Republican governors?
Well, there's been a long history in New England of moderate Republican governors. You know what presidential candidate was once governor of Massachusetts?
Mitt Romney.
Mitt Romney.
Ding, ding, ding.
Exactly. And kind of the old patrician conservatives like Henry Cabot Lodge have kind of faded away as American conservatism in the late 20th century moved to the South and to the West. There was a major geographic switch in the locus of American conservatism.
Locus?
The locus.
Wow. Do you believe that the recent interviews with Maxwell should be released? I recently watched an interview from her talking about Trump in a bogus, positive way. It was almost hard not to say, huh? With her saying that Trump was a poet writer.
I haven't seen any piece of her interview. I don't think it should be released. This was, a setup. You get Trump's former lawyer interviewing Maxwell, and I believe for the sole purpose of exonerating Trump and implicating Democrats. I see no public purpose of releasing such a setup.
You know what they could do instead? The FBI could just release what they have.
Right, which they should have done.
Right.
Unredacted, except redacting the names of the victims.
Right.
But they should not be redacting any other names, whether Bill Clinton or Donald Trump. Let it all hang out. Let the sun shine on this.
In the case of Abrego Garcia, it's been very quiet. I assume that he's being kept in jail for protection purposes. What do you think may happen next?
Yeah, he is being kept in jail, probably for protection. He's going to have his day in court. And I don't know all of the evidence, but I presume it's going to be a fair proceeding for him one way or the other. The problem is, from what I've seen, I don't think they have a strong criminal case against him. I think a lot of that's fabricated, but we'll see. That's just from what I've seen. We don't know what other evidence might come out at a trial, but the problem is they've said no matter what happens, they're still going to deport him, if not, but not necessarily to El Salvador.
All right, you want to do one more question?
What time is it?
We've got 2 minutes left.
Sure.
Okay. I'm not exactly sure what they're saying here. They say.
Skip it then. I finally have one more question.
Okay.
Make it a straightforward one.
Why is the FBI involved in a civil matter to take Texas legislators back to Texas? There is no criminal activity. Talk about a political police force.
You're right on. There is no crime that's been charged with respect to their leaving the state. That's not a crime. You may be for it or against it. It is strictly a civil matter in which the FBI should never become involved with. They are an organization designed to deal with crime, not with civil issues, and certainly not with political issues. But, I did a whole short on this. We've talked about it extensively. Trump has talked about the so-called deep state in the swamp for a decade. Well, what he means by the deep state is government employees doing their job as professionals, not necessarily catering to Trump's interests and values. He considers that bias, independent professionalism. So instead, what he's done is created a vastly worse deep state or swamp than anything we have seen in U.S. history. Appointing his loyalists to key government positions, officials who are not beholden to the Constitution or the American people, but to Donald Trump. and will do whatever is necessary to advance his political interests. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. The questioner is right. This is turning into a political police force, and I am really in fear it's going to become much, much worse once ICE is beefed up.
No beefing ICE.
Yeah.
All right. With that, we will wrap up Lichtman Live for this evening. The good news is the Lichtman Live post show comes up right after this on my channel. Dad, what are your final words to the people tonight?
Well, there's a lot happening. It's the old Gish Gallop, throw out so much stuff that you can't focus on anything. But I think we've highlighted tonight some incredibly important matters that we need to focus on and need to deal with as best we can. And I've outlined various ways in all of our programs that all of you can influence the course of America's destiny. Thank you and good night.
Quick shout out to some donators, Heather Grass, 80 Mart. Big shout out to Culinary Guy who donated and also for helping me. If you know, you know. Thank you, Culinary Guy. All right. Say good night, Dad.
Good night.